Friends, my hope today is for these familiar and ancient words to come alive for you right now in your life. These ancient metaphors of shepherds, so far away from our 21st century lifestyle, and yet perfect examples of what is being expressed underneath them. The Lord is my shepherd. I want to make a point here, and that all of us can enter that realm of peace, of eternal communion with the Holy One. I imagine that's why you are here so soon. You know, so many of us become very bitter when we deal with loss, when we deal with grief. In fact, I can't help but deal with the big question. And it is my prayer that nobody here walk away with that question. Because that is the wrong question. And it happens every time. People who don't give a thought to the reality of God will blame God for the horrors occurring in humanity. As though we all took for granted that this mystery named God was some kind of puppet master or chess player who made it all happen. Let's get this very straight, shall we? How dare we blame God for the evils of humanity? And this is extremely important to this passage, because this is the passage where those poetic words, they belong to me, they hear my voice, they know me and I know them. There is a relationship between the shepherd and the sheep, which means there is no relationship between those who are not the sheep. And it is those who are not the sheep who create such horror in this world. He did not hear the voice of the shepherd. And there are many everywhere, all around, more and more, who do not hear the voice of the shepherd. Which means it is all the more important that we do. But what does this metaphor mean? Hearing voices in our heads? No. Aligning ourselves with a way of living that is made known to us by the one we call shepherd. Remembering these teachings, you can't hate your brother and say you love God. This is a radical change of life. This is a movement from just a natural person interested in their survival to a being full of love for others. Why? Because they know they have a shepherd. Because they are guided. Because in the mystery of this universe they know there is protection, thy rod and thy staff. They know that they will be led into an inner peace that cannot be taken away from them. That no one will snatch them out of the unconditional love which holds them. When you don't know that, what do you have? A vacuum. And nature hates a vacuum. When we do not listen to that voice of the shepherd, to the one who gives us life and direction and sacrificial love and will stand in the gate to protect us against the wolves, then we are left shepherdless. What happens to lambs? Now let me go over that once again, that metaphor of the sheep. I suspect some of us don't particularly like that metaphor because we tend to think of it, especially from the 70s, as blindly, thoughtlessly following a guru, which many folks have done in their hunger for something. But that is not at all the meaning of sheep. The innocence, the need of the lamb, the total dependence of that creature on the shepherd, the interaction of the two, the love that is between the two, the picture of God and you. And if you don't know that, what do you have to stand on? Yourself? Your own strength? That won't last very long. And so when folks who have no interest in this relationship of love, relationship that is so trusting and dependent, suddenly blame the Good Shepherd for the evils of humanity, you know we are in one messed up world. And the horror of it is every single time I hear these conversations, there's a religious clergy person who doesn't question that idea of God. God must have had a purpose. God didn't have any purpose. Let us free ourselves from that primitive Old Testament way of thinking that Jesus came to change. You have heard it said, but I say to you, we live in a universe that has given us freedom to love back. There is relationship there. It is beautiful. And we will be very sad. She's gone, as each of you no doubt has had the experience. That is the simple metaphor of a love that makes life worthwhile. We have a shepherd who will protect us with his life, and who is no naive fantasy, because he talks about thieves and bandits and wolves in sheep's clothing. Very realistic. We have to understand that these wolves are not just out there. We know there are plenty of wolves out there. We've got wolves in here. I told the folks in the chapel there's a story of a man who put up a big fence around his house to keep the wolves out, until he discovered they were in his basement. We have wolves in our subconscious that we have to be aware of, that we need that shepherd to guard us against. And the thing about being a lamb is that we will wander off. And who has not wandered off? Who has not done something really stupid? Who has forgotten what we praise and sing about here on Sunday morning? All of us, especially in college, apparently. You got to go through that to find your way back. Some of our members took 30 years to make it back to church. But what a wonderful thing to be back, to recognize that it wasn't all a myth or some silly tradition, but a living relationship that guides, that protects with its life, and that you can count on. Imagine a creature that can't even feed itself. The sheep are just about the only ones who can't figure out how to go into the pasture and have their little lunch on the grass. They have to be taken. That's love and care. And then they scatter. But the power of Spirit is to keep us from harm against ourselves. Because if the shepherd's not careful, any lamb will find a hole in a gate and take off. Why? They don't know. They just take off. And we do the same. We cannot make it on our own. We weren't built for that. I know that goes against the American myth of the tough individual. But we all know that when we come up against the wall, when we are faced with real pain and struggle, we could use a little help. And we can get help if we listen to the voice, if we recognize the voice of the shepherd. There are plenty who refuse to recognize it. Because if you recognize it and know that you are known by the shepherd, that the shepherd knows your name, it means the shepherd knows all about you. And most of us don't want to be completely known. It's too vulnerable. It requires the humility to recognize our own weaknesses by the fact that we are known. But we are taught here that even so, even with our weaknesses, even with our mistakes, even with our inability to care for ourselves, the shepherd is there at the gate, protecting us, leading us out into the pastures, feeding us, caring for us. That is a faith, a reality put into a picture and sent down through time so that today you can find that connection. And when that connection is broken, where was God? In all the people who ran to help. That's where God was. You could see it. In all the people who made efforts beyond belief for the stranger. All the ones who will help all along the way. God is with us. God is seeking to gather God's flock together of those who know Him. Meanwhile, there are wolves coming over the fence with different ideas, different versions of religion. And what a mess it is today. I've said this so many times. What do you do to find a church today? Just last night, I was at the UPS store and somebody opened up to me. I don't know how that happens. Go from buying a package to talking about life. My wife tells me I got to stop that because it makes all my grocery trips very long. And suddenly I find out here's someone who was a Catholic and gave up her faith and is searching, can't find anything. Jesus might show up here one of these days. People are searching, are hungry. They know there's a shepherd out there. They know something is missing. We are designed to be dependent on that magnificent love and protection. And the irony of this story is that it's the religious people who claim to believe in God who want to kill the shepherd, who say, tell us if you are the Messiah, yes or no. It's the only time in the gospel, flat out, tell us. And they preface that by saying, how long will you continue to, you heard it read, keep us in suspense? That's not what they said. How long will you continue to annoy us? You're annoying us with this new talk of love and intimacy and Abba, which is the nature of God. And the only purpose they ask him that question for is not to get the answer, is he the Messiah? It's to trap him, because they don't hear and recognize the voice of the shepherd. It's each one of us, one at a time, whose heart resonates to the goodness, to the care, to the love, to the need, that hears the voice, that realizes that it is known. And to be known makes you whole. You don't have to depend on others and their approval. Good luck with that one. With the shepherd, you are known and loved, period. So this is a teaching at the core of our faith. We can be those people that are strengthened by our dependence on the shepherd, and that will be there to help others find the shepherd, and that will not scatter and get lost. And it's urgent because, you know, when you scatter and lose your way and the shepherd hasn't found you yet, and you're out there in the dark, there's danger out there. There are creatures in the dark. That's why we see so much horror on the news. So often, what you're looking at is a lost sheep who doesn't know its shepherd. Let us at least be the ones who recognize the shepherd, who rejoice at the shepherd, who stay with the shepherd, and who live by the shepherd's way. Hallelujah.